This presentation will look at the effects of grade retention. States have been under an increasing amount of pressure to hold students accountable for their success. One way that many states have attempted to do this is through grade retention if a student does not meet standards. However, these policies have recently come under significant fire. There are several pieces of legislation that are left up to individual states. One of these aspects is that of education. Federal law does not mandate grade retention for students who are not performing up to standard. Instead, federal law sets minimum requirements for statewide accountability systems, and states use these to determine if their students are making adequate yearly progress. What this means, of course, is that different states require different standards for promotion, retention, and graduation. States like Texas have a policy that students have to pass a grade level test starting in 3rd grade in order to be promoted. Other states, such as Minnesota, don't have requirements like that. Minnesota authorizes local school boards to implement policies or consider specific criteria for grade promotion and retention. This can include statewide tests, such as the grad test or MCA tests, but it is not required. Many districts make their policy based on recommendations by school board associations. The Minnesota School Board Association states that retention of a student may be considered when professional staff and parents feel that it is in the best interest of the student. Physical development, maturity, and emotional factors shall be considered as well as scholastic achievement. The superintendent's decision shall be final. Many local districts, including Edina, Eden Prairie, and Eagle Ridge Academy, have taken this wording for their own policies. Grade retention has increased in frequency, although most research shows it does more harm than good. U.S. Census data is the best source of information that researchers have, since there is no national database to track the amount of students retained. Current data states that 9.6% of students aged 16 to 19 have been retained one or more times, which should cause alarm. Retention is the single most powerful predictor of dropping out of school. Dropouts are 5 times more likely to have repeated a grade than high school graduates. There is a 35% chance that students retained will drop out, and the statistics suggest nearly a 100% chance of students dropping out if they are retained 2 or more times. Dropping out of school also leads to fewer employment opportunities, fewer lifetime earnings, lack of furthering education, and an increased likelihood of incarceration. These are problems predominantly seen as issues of race, class, and English language learners. There is support for retention, just as there are people against it. Those who support it cite research by Wu, West, and Hughes. These researchers suggest that there is no psychological harm done if the retention is done in kindergarten or 1st grade. What they noticed is that retention led to improved scores relative to same grade peers on reading and math. In a 2-year follow-up visit with these students, there were fewer child-reported internalizing problems that would have been expected if the students had been promoted. These would have been issues with things such as anxiety. The academic short-term gains diminished, but students were better accepted during the repeat year. By year 4 in the follow-up visit, there were no longer differences between students who had been retained and those who had been promoted on academics, acceptance, or school belonging. However, other research at the upper grades indicates that it is detrimental to the student. After grade 2, students have an increasing awareness of grade retention, and they often have feelings of failure, worthlessness, resignation, and withdrawal. Students claim that the repeat year was unhelpful since they had the same assignments, texts, instruction, and teachers, and they also had to deal with social stigmatization and their own emotional reactions. These students were often targeted by other students for being dumb or too old for their grades. This predisposes them to dropping out of school. There is also the added cost of keeping kids in school longer. This is due to the need for more teachers, classrooms, and support services, and an additional cost for the state to pay for these students an additional year. Retention leads to an increase in the dropout rates in high school. There is a 10% higher retention rate for boys than girls, and more African Americans and Hispanic students are held back than white students. Research shows that holding students back without changing instruction is ineffective. There needs to be buy-in from the parents and students if it is determined that retention is the best way to go. And when possible, different teachers need to be given to the students to deliver instruction in a different way for this to have a chance of success. Schools need to address the barriers that lead to poor learning at school. Policy must be expanded to ensure that efforts to address barriers to learning and teaching are pursued as a primary and essential component of school improvement. This can include personalized instruction and specialized assistance. Other ideas could be school restructuring, quality early childhood programs, and effective reading instruction. Some of the most helpful suggestions come from the students who have been retained. These students have cited summer school and Saturday school as something that may be effective because there are smaller class sizes and more personalized instruction. They also suggested extending the day for extra help, remediation, and tutorials, and changing unstructured study halls into structured study halls. Ultimately, schools are obligated to find what works for students to help them experience success.